I've grown a full beard on my balls since my last video, so let's get right into it, shall we? 7 villains I'd like to see in a Spider-Man film. Number 7, Hydro Man. You must think I'm joking. The guy whose superpower is to make you wet, not the fun kind of wet, just wet. The guy who runs out of himself if he doesn't pay the water bill on time. The guy who's 100% redundant when you have a Sandman and an Electric Man on call, and whose high point in the comics was to merge together with the former in an unintentionally homoerotic way to create a mud thing, their words not mine. That Hydro Man, yes, that Hydro Man, and I've never told a joke in my entire life. The caveat is that I don't want comic book Hydro Man, but the animated series version, or something akin to it. Why? Because there's something symbolic about him. Hydrant Man in this incarnation is Mary Jane's ex-boyfriend who tries to reconnect with her and can't take no for an answer, gets rejected by her, gets melodramatic over it, quickly identifies Spider-Man as his romantic rival and feels emasculated by him, is a professional stalker.
He's a stalker!
And kidnaps Mary Jane in an attempt to exchange fluids with her, mostly in a one-sided way, although to be fair, the wettest nympho in the world couldn't keep up with Moist Man over here. There's something fitting about a lustful, whiny, spiteful man-child being portrayed as a bottle of aloe vera. Also, Fiji Man's female fixation is a fitting nod to these decidedly simpful times. The other reason why he'd be fun to include is to give Spidey the opportunity to outsmart him in a myriad ways, like draining him, freezing him, literally mopping him, electrocuting him, building a dam around him, trapping him into a sauna, or just use an umbrella. Now, to be fair, there's probably not enough material here to make Gym Towel Man the main villain, and even if you hired clever enough writers to endow him with enough traits to make him feel interesting, audiences would likely be disappointed that Tour de France Man is the next big villain when there are so many other better ones waiting to have a go at the wall hugger. So we'll leave Wet His Own Pants Man as a potential side villain and move on. Number 6, Rhino.
I'm the Rhino.
If we're talking comic book characters that have been fucked by Hollywood beyond all recognition, literally, then Rhino has to make top 3 alongside Deadpool and Catwoman, and I'd like this guy to get a second chance if for no other reason than that alone. But there are others. You see, while it's nice to have a villain that's both smart and physically formidable, sometimes it's nice to just have the physically formidable part and dial that to 11 in order to really push the hero to the limits of their physicality, and Rhino definitely fits that bill. And for the love of steroids, enough with the mechanical Michael Bay Transformers fetish. Just give this man a leotard and access to Liver King's personal stack. The cool thing is there's plenty of big burly men that could do the lummox justice. Dave Bautista comes to mind, but an actual Russian would be even better. Another fun side villain. Number 5, Shocker. Shocking, I know. Another character butchered by the film industry, Shocker actually has some cool things to offer. For one, he's a self-taught engineer and inventor, so he could be made to challenge the inventive Spider-Man on that front. And for another, he's at least trying to be more original by not being motivated by revenge, chaos, or some misguided higher purpose, you know, like most of the fucking rogues gallery. He doesn't really have much against Spider-Man, just the law. Thus, he sometimes ends up helping the Webhead and other heroes if it suits his agenda, which is my kind of opportunism, really. The other reason why I'd put him into a Spidey film is so I can hear this.
Shocker! You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
Number 4, Black Cat. I'm not particularly fond of cats, nor do I think introducing essentially Marvel's version of Catwoman to be a strictly good idea, mostly because it's redundant, and because the character never struck me as having incredible depth to her, but my knowledge is cursory at best. She is wildly popular, however, so she should convince the money-hungry suits based on that alone. Honestly, I don't know how she never made the cut up to this point. Well, there was that one version from Amazing Spider-Man 2 with... I'll see myself out now. In most incarnations, Black Cat is the daughter of a thief, whereas in the animated series, she's a rich socialite. I think we can merge the two together and concoct a storyline where Felicia Hardon is a filthy rich trust fund kid who discovers her family's wealth was amassed by way of piles upon piles of stolen art, which prompts an identity crisis, eventually leading her to turn her father in, thus exposing him to a crime syndicate he stole from, who then kidnaps him and forces her to pay them back lest they execute him, igniting her career as a professional thief and all-around daddy issues girl, and placing her at odds with Spider-Man, who fights her, then helps her, then gets duped by her, etc, etc. We can get into that whole will they won't they game while the ever-single Hydrate Man salivates from the sidelines. We can also get a decent love triangle going. I mean, I hate the things, but if you're gonna do one, this is the way to do it. Have one girl fall for the mask, have another girl fall for what's behind the mask, and then just watch as the hero tortures himself like the indecisive, greedy prick that he is. I think the thing that distinguishes black cunt, I think the thing that distinguishes black pussy, I think the thing that distinguishes Felicia from Selena is that Selena initially acts like a wily wild card, but exposes her desire to bear the Batman more children than an entire Chinese district rather quickly, while the feline Felicia seems more interested in the mask rather than the man behind it. She remains the emotionally ambiguous femme fatale till the end. She also oscillates between enemy and ally quite a bit, and I have a soft spot in my thoracic cavity for characters who just can't decide if they're villains, anti-heroes, or just assholes. Just remember, Sony, Black Cat doesn't mean African American cat. If blackface is considered offensive, then race swapping should be included in the same bucket of piss. Which might be Hydro Man, I don't know. Number 3, Hobgoblin. No, not that guy. That guy. This is another version I'd port more or less directly from the animated series, as I feel that one's the most interesting. First and foremost because you don't really know who he is at first. His first appearance is in full trick-or-treat gear, and you don't find out who he is until way later. As a bonus, his identity causes a handful of complications for one of the other characters on this list, so that's nice. The other thing I like about Cock Gobbler is that he's surprisingly competent, being able to outwit both Norman Osborn as well as the Kingpin. He's also an opportunist.
You're a lying opportunist!
His only allegiance, really, is to himself, and whenever he appears on the scene, it spells trouble for pretty much everyone. That, however, doesn't stop him from successfully forging alliances with powerful people, and then double-crossing them. Lastly, I think I prefer his dastardly wit to Green Goblin's over-the-top insanity. Side note, Mark Hamill voices this guy pretty similarly to the Joker. Never realized this before, but it does make the character a bit less distinctive.
Name's Hobgoblin, and you're right on time for your funeral.
Still like him though. Number 2, Kraven the Hunter. I mentioned formidable opponents earlier, and Coward the Hunter certainly qualifies. It doesn't get much more formidable than a guy whose life goal is to hunt Spider-Man for sport. Kraven is to Spider-Man what Deathstroke is to Batman. He pushes Spidey to his absolute limits, and it wouldn't be that hard to craft an adrenaline-inducing movie that's essentially one long cat-and-mouse game between Kraven and Spidey. Basically The Fugitive with superheroes. In fact, I envision something similar to the canned Batman movie that Ben Affleck was supposed to direct, where Deathstroke would learn who Batman is and proceed to systematically tear his life apart. Speaking of, number 1. Chameleon. You know what I'm obsessed with? Mystery. You know what keeps an audience engaged? Mystery. You know what Chameleon is? One big
mystery.
And since Mysterio's big screen debut left me wanting for any actual mystery, ironically, our last bastion of mystery and hope for humanity is old Dimitri the Albino. Picture a murder mystery, a cat and mouse chase, and a frame job all in one movie. Ever since the internet started clamoring for The Amazing Spider-Man 3, I've envisioned a sequel based off of this line.
At some point, I stopped pulling my punches. I got rageful.
Depending on how fucked up your brain is, you could interpret this to imply some really nasty shit, like Spider-Man kills now, Spider-Man mutilates his enemies, Spider-Man causes wanton destruction. More wanton destruction. Perhaps he was becoming the menace that J. Jonah Jameson always made him out to be. Now, imagine him going through the events of No Way Home, going back home, all inspired to turn a new leaf, only to read the latest headline saying that Spider-Man just killed the mayor or something. A massive investigation and witch hunt ensues, with Spider-Man constantly on the run trying to prove his innocence and find out who actually did it. A tall order, considering how much he soiled his own reputation over the last couple years. Turns out it was Chameleon. Hooray! Good luck finding a guy who can be literally anybody at any time, all the time. Lots of opportunities for Spidey's Spidey sense to shine. Spider-Man on the run? That sounds kinda like No Way Home. No, No Way Home had a similar premise that then got hijacked by a different premise in classic MCU fashion. So that's my idea for a frantic, paranoia-pumping TASM 3, where Garfield's Spidey quite literally has to redeem himself and clear his name. This is also kinda like The Fugitive. Guess I like that film more than I thought. But yeah, would be a good opportunity to test Spidey in different ways. His smarts, his planning, his detective skills, his restraint to not hurt any of the cops chasing him is also a good opportunity to give JJ the spotlight as one of the main forces chasing Peter, perhaps bringing them to a head near the end in a situation where Spidey's forced to unmask himself and JJ's forced to have a conscience and not reveal the information to the world, realizing that Spider-Man is just one of his employees trying to make ends meet and look out for his only surviving family member, and is faced with compelling evidence that seems to clear Spider-Man's name, forcing him into the biggest conflict of interests the character's ever seen. Finally unmask Spider-Man, but sacrifice the principles of truth and integrity that he and his Daily Bugle stand for, or do the right thing and sacrifice his elephantine ego. And if you really want to squeeze a shameless sequel tease at the end, you can do so naturally and organically by finally introducing Garfield's version of MJ at the very end as a way to signify that the character has finally redeemed himself and thus earned his prize and blah. Those are the 7 villains that oh fuckle spank, I forgot the bonus villain, the Man Spider. What is best in life than seeing your beloved hero devolve into a 6-armed, multi-eyed giant spider, the result of either a trip to the Savage Land, a disturbing date night with an unnecessarily lewd insect queen, or just his spider powers entering a new stage of mutation and becoming a liability to those he swore to protect. I can't think of anything cooler than seeing a hairy set of mandibles bursting out of that mask, replacing Peter's smug, Kenworthy face, to see the people's hero contorting and writhing as multiple limbs erupt from his inferior human form as he finally starts shooting webs from the accurate place where he's supposed to. And where did everybody go? What? Too much? None of y'all flinched when Eddie Brock started chomping heads.